Hello viewers, Ford DIYers here, back with another video for everyone. Now this is something of a little different nature than what I'm typically used to. I have produced quite a few tool review videos in the past along with other products, and I thought maybe something a little different for this time around, especially since it's my own vehicle and I do have a chance to kind of provide first-hand experience of what the ownership is like. Now for this here, this is my 2007 Volvo C30 equipped with the 2.5 liter T5 turbo engine, and it's also paired with the M66 Getrag manual transmission. Now this is a 6-speed transmission. These cars also were available in an automatic and a 5-speed. Now this can vary depending on your engine size. Now this engine was rated, if I remember correctly, at 217 horsepower. Then after a year it was bumped up to only about 10 horsepower more, and it still continued with the 236 foot-pounds of torque. Now these cars are only available in a front-wheel drive version. However, some do exist out there that people have converted that use the parts from the S40 and V50 cars to do an all-wheel drive conversion, and they're just basically one-off cars. There's only a handful of those that ever exist out there, and the modifications are quite extensive on those. Now there is build threats in some of the Volvo communities, so I would definitely, if you're interested in them, check them out because they are pretty well detailed and certainly interesting to see. Now this car here, this was available between the years 2006 and 2013. Roughly about 200,000 of these cars were made, unfortunately. And the reason for their discontinuation was that Volvo wasn't selling enough cars. They did sell quite a few. Now the 2007, according to the production numbers from what I've been able to find, I'm not sure exactly how accurate they are, 2007 was the most years sold. After that, the numbers kind of hung in there a little bit and then dropped down, and it was only like a few thousand within like the last year, and it wasn't making them any money, so they decided to discontinue the car, which is unfortunate because this is a really cool little sport compact. You know, it looks great. I personally think the styling has always really held in there over the years. Now this is a pre-facelift version. They did a facelifted version after. I do prefer this style over the other, which typically is with other cars. I usually prefer the newer version. Considering this car is classified under the P1 platform, it does share many components with other models of Volvos, Ford, and Mazda. Now this can include the Volvo S40, Volvo V50, and Volvo C70. With the Ford, this includes the Ford Focus, and for the Mazda, it's the Mazda 3. Now this can vary depending on what market it is available around the world. This may be different between the European and American markets. Now the engines that were available in these cars were both gas and diesel, again varying depending on what market you are in, and this can range anything from a 1.6 liter to a 2.5, all either naturally aspirated or turboed engines. Now as for the styling of this car, now it is a quite modern design with the waterfall center console. You have all the buttons in one central location, so they're fairly easy to control. It's within reaching distance, which I know some cars you do have to overextend to get to those buttons. Now you will have the power windows, power locks, all that stuff, dual climate control. This does have a built-in MP3 player inside the dash here, along with the auxiliary port. It does have air conditioning, heated seats. This does have manual seats, this car, but you could get it with power seats. Now I do have the fabric with the vinyl sides on it, and leather was also available. I have the sunroof as well, keyless entry. Now I do have the key that I have to plug into the dash, but on the newer models, it did come with a push-button start, which I think was a nice feature to add. I have full steering wheel controls. It does have an onboard computer to tell me about my mileage, of the fuel economy, temperature outside, all that, the range of the fuel tank. Now you will notice the styling does somewhat resemble the, I believe it was around the 70s, the P1800 ES car, which was quite a classic car. It was only made for a few years, and they're actually a well-known car, especially if you ever remember the series from the Saint, which he drove a coupe instead of the hatchback version. Now this does have the flared fenders, similar design, and it also has the full glass rear hatch. Now being that this is a coupe, this car, surprisingly there is some decent room in the back seat, and you can fit adults in there. Now this is only a 4-seater car, so it doesn't have the center seat in the back, which even if it did, I don't imagine it'd be too comfortable sitting 3 people in the back seat. I do find the trunk space can be a bit tight at times, especially when you go grocery shopping. You can fill it up quite quick. Now, if you were needing bigger items, that can include anything from furniture, maybe boxes, it's going to pack up real fast, and especially with that rear trunk tray, that can be a bit of a pain, I do find. And I find some of the components are also cheap, such as that rear trunk tray. Now, when I purchased this car, unfortunately, the owner was a bit rough on it, so that tray is broken in some spots. Now, these trays are known to break. Now, I have fixed a couple components on it, but it still does need a little attention, unfortunately. You will find other areas, such as the speaker covers and the door panels. They also are known to break, and a lot of Volvo models, the newer ones, have that problem. And unfortunately, with this particular car, they don't sell that component just on its own, so you have to buy a whole new door panel. Now, with that being said, yes, this car is a bit finicky for parts, what I've noticed, such as the axle. Some of you may remember that replacement I did on this car. Now, that I ended up dishing out $700 for an axle. That's a lot of money. And unfortunately, if you go with an aftermarket replacement, well, it may not last as long, or you may have problems down the road, such as any vibrations or whatever that may be. So I wanted to visit that issue once and not have to worry about it again. The dealer only offers a rebuild unit. You can't buy a new unit, unfortunately. Now, I did contact the company, GKN, who makes the axles for these cars, and they don't offer a rebuild kit for them either, so you can't really save money there. Now, other components I do find, it might be hit and miss depending on the car, depending on what goes wrong. So that's something to be mindful about. A lot of new car companies are going towards that, making some parts limited. I know Ford has been doing that with some of their trucks. So it's something to take into account. It can be costly in the end. Other component failures I've had on this car, not really failures per se, but are known to be problem areas, would be the coolant tanks are known to crack. The cabin filters can be a bit of a pain to replace on these cars, but overall I've been doing basic maintenance on it, which hasn't been too much of an issue. I did have an issue with the Pcv valve. Again, Volvo wants to buy a whole new filter assembly, and it's a heated Pcv system, and that's, I believe I remember correctly, was about $400. So I ended up ordering a diaphragm from Russia, which only cost me, I think it was $80 with shipping, and I had the rush shipping put on that. Now, as for noise in the cabin, it can be a little noisy at times, I do find. Now, I have currently 17-inch wheels on this car right now for the winter time. The ride tends to be a bit better with the higher profile tire. Summer tires are 18-inch. They're 225 wide, so you do feel quite a bit of the road. I believe they're 225. They might be 235. I'd have to double check on that. I'll include the information down the bottom anyway. The suspension, surprisingly for a shorter wheelbase, it's not choppy on it. It is a firm suspension. Now, these suspensions are also known, they can chew through components a bit quicker. You do have a negative camber issue on these cars. Now, some people don't have it, other people do. It probably depends on the age. Some of these cars were equipped with sport springs too. This one doesn't have that. And these will wear out the tires on the inside edge a bit quicker. Now, you can go off and purchase adjustable control arms. Can't remember exactly how much they were, and it's certainly an upgrade that I would recommend doing if you do plan on keeping the car daily driving it. Now, if you are of more of a track base, the negative camber will be a lot nicer for cornering. Now, being that this is a front wheel drive, your front wheels are doing both the steering and driving at the same time. However, it does corner quite nicely, this car. The handling is excellent on it. It certainly is an understated little car. As for fuel economy, I'm not going to say it's worse than other vehicles I've had, but I'm not going to say it's better than other vehicles. Now, the 5-cylinder, it can get quite thirsty. I mean, right now, I'm doing it's dropped down just now, but I'm doing about 8 liters per 100 kilometers, and I'm driving about 65 kilometers an hour. Now, at highway speeds, I find if you're doing about 110, it tends to be lower, and I think I was looking about, I can't remember what the liter conversion was for that, but it was about 40 miles to the gallon. Then if you start bumping up a bit, it can start kicking back, so it will suck it up quite quickly, and especially if you start being a little more aggressive with the throttle, yes, it does drink the fuel, and it is a known car for that. Now, if you are looking for one that's more fuel efficient, you may go for the 2.4 liter naturally aspirated engine, or if you're in the European market, you can purchase a diesel, which apparently they are quite good on fuel. Now, we don't have that model available, but overall, I gotta say, it's a cool little car. It served me well. I've put about 10,000 kilometers on it. I actually bought this car on my birthday, which is just over a year ago. That was in November of 2017. So I've put 10,000 kilometers on it, and I put about $1,000 into maintenance on this car, and I do all the maintenance myself on it, of course, many of you know. So far, other than that, it's changing the spark plugs, air filters, Besides for the axle failure, or not failure, but it was a failing component. That was based on the previous owner who had a ripped boot. Diaphragm is the only thing I've experienced really in the ownership, and as for the coolant tank, that was just preventative maintenance because I noticed it started getting some deterioration in the plastic. Overall, I have to admit this has been a great little car. Now, I've put about $1,000 into maintenance on total. Again, that's going to vary depending on where you're located, what parts you put into this. Now I'm putting in OEM parts on it, so that tends to be more expensive. Now that includes everything from the axle, the coolant tank, spark plugs, engine air filters, oil changes. It's everything I've done to it. Now it's all just pure parts and maintenance. There is no cost of labor because I do all the work myself, as many of you are aware. The T5 engine sounds absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, I think Volvo could have did a little bit better with the interior finish on this. I do find it can be a bit cheap at times. It does have more road noise. The V70 and S60 models, I think, are a little bit nicer finished. However, for the money, this is a great car, and surprisingly, there is quite a bit of aftermarket support for it, which you wouldn't expect. Many of the parts are interchangeable between the S40 and V50. And you will find some of the Ford Focus ST parts will fit this car as well. Now it really does depend. I know they do share the axles. I did cover that in my axle video. Would it be something I do grow attached to? Not really. Just to be honest, I do find it doesn't quite have that, I guess, flair or character, even though it does look beautiful, this car, when you're looking at the exterior, and the interior is very modern design. It just doesn't have that emotional attachment that I find they've had with past cars. But again, that's going to vary between people, and it's just is based on my opinion. I'm not trying to run down the car, and I would certainly like to hear from other owners of the P1 platform how you like your cars, what you've experienced for maintenance, and how has it been as an overall car, just quality and reliability wise. So with that being said, that concludes the rest of my video. And if you have any comments or questions just in general, please post them below. I'm always happy to hear them, read them, and answer them. Thank you for watching.